Why does the mind understand the need to let go, yet the heart holds on as if worry were the only thing keeping life together? There is a quiet kind of suffering that comes from replaying moments that no longer exist, and pre-living fears that may never arrive. It drains sleep, blurs clarity, and turns even simple days into a battlefield between what is real and what is imagined. What few realize is this: worry is not born from events themselves, but from the meanings we attach to them. Marcus Aurelius warned that the true weight we carry is not what happens, but what we tell ourselves about what happens. And in a world obsessed with control, the fear of losing it has become a silent epidemic. But there is another way, a Stoic way, a path built on clarity, acceptance, detachment, and the power to return the mind to what is truly within one's command. Today, we explore 7 Stoic truths that dissolve worry from the inside out. 1. Worry is a story, not reality. There is a moment, quiet and almost unnoticeable, when worry begins. It doesn't arrive as a disaster. It arrives as a whisper, a thought, a memory, an unfinished conversation, a possibility floating somewhere in the future. And before awareness catches it, that whisper becomes a narrative, and the narrative becomes a storm. Stoic philosophy begins with a simple, unsettling truth. Most of what is feared is not real. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the weight people suffer comes more from imagination than from the world itself. Not because the world is gentle, but because the mind is powerful enough to turn a shadow into a threat. Worry thrives in that space where uncertainty meets imagination, weaving stories filled with outcomes that never happened and judgments no one made. The mind creates these stories because it wants control. If it can predict what might go wrong, maybe it can shield itself from disappointment. But prediction is not protection. It is a cage made from thoughts that feel like truth simply because they feel familiar. A single doubt can become a narrative. What if this falls apart? What if I'm not enough? What if something goes wrong? And the body reacts as if danger is already here, even though nothing has occurred. The difference between reality and the story of worry is subtle but life-changing. Reality is what is. The story is what the mind adds to it. Reality says, I have a task tomorrow. The story says, if I fail tomorrow, everything falls apart. Reality says, this person hasn't responded yet. The story says, they must be disappointed, angry, or leaving. The mind writes entire chapters without any evidence, and the heart suffers the consequences. Stoicism invites a pause, the space where awareness can break the illusion. Worry loses power the moment it is seen as a story rather than a fact. When the mind whispers a fear, the question becomes, is this happening, or am I imagining it? This is not denial. It is discipline. It is the ability to stand at the doorway of the mind and separate events from the meaning layered onto them. And when worry is seen clearly, something shifts. The storm does not end instantly, but the wind weakens, the heart loosens, the breath deepens. What once felt like a threat becomes a thought, and a thought can be observed rather than obeyed. This is the essence of Stoic clarity. The recognition that nothing has the authority to overwhelm unless permission is given. The story of worry is loud, but reality is quiet, and peace begins the moment the difference is finally seen. 2. You don't control outcomes, only your actions. There is a kind of exhaustion that comes not from doing too much, but from holding too tightly. The mind clings to outcomes because it believes certainty equals safety. If the future could just be predicted, shaped, or forced into place, maybe worry would disappear. Yet the opposite happens. The more the mind tries to control what was never its responsibility, the more anxious it becomes. Epictetus taught a truth that feels simple until life tests it. Some things are within your control, and some things are not. Everything becomes clearer the moment these two categories are separated. But worry blurs that line. It convinces the mind that with enough pressure, enough planning, enough fear, the uncontrollable might somehow bend to will. That illusion drains energy, poisons clarity, and creates a constant low-level panic beneath the surface of daily life. Outcomes are not obedient. They do not respond to fear or desire. They are shaped by countless forces: timing, circumstance, other people's choices, the unpredictable unfolding of reality. Yet the mind personalizes everything, believing that a future event is a reflection of its own worth or failure. When a plan shifts, panic rises. When silence appears, rejection is assumed. When things don't fall into place, shame fills the gaps. But actions are different. Actions belong entirely to the individual. The quality of effort, the clarity of intention, the discipline of showing up, these are within reach. When attention returns to what can be done instead of what must happen, something loosens inside. The body unclenches. The breath deepens. Worry fades because responsibility becomes smaller, clearer, more human. Stoicism is not passive acceptance. It is the courage to stop fighting battles that cannot be won. It is the discipline of placing energy only where it can create change. It is the inner confidence that comes from knowing what is truly mine cannot be taken, and what is not mine cannot be controlled. Imagine approaching life with that clarity. A conversation that once created anxiety becomes simply a chance to speak honestly. A task that once felt heavy becomes just the next step. An uncertain future becomes something to meet, not fear. The mind begins to understand that peace is not found in controlling outcomes, but in mastering actions. When the boundary between these two is honored, worry loses its fuel, and the heart discovers a freedom it has been craving for far too long. 3. Acceptance is not defeat. It is clarity. There is a unique kind of suffering that comes from resisting what already exists. The mind argues with reality as if reality might apologize and change course. It replays the past, rewrites conversations, imagines different outcomes, and clings to the idea that things should have unfolded another way. In that quiet tug-of-war between what is and what should have been, worry takes root. Acceptance, in the Stoic sense, is not surrender. It is sight. It is the ability to look at life without distortion, without the fog of expectation, fear, or wishful thinking. Seneca wrote that fate leads those who are willing and drags those who resist. Not because fate is cruel, but because resistance turns every step into friction. Life becomes heavier, not from what happens, but from the refusal to let it be what it already is. When something unwanted enters life, a loss, a delay, a betrayal, a plan collapsing, the first instinct is often to brace against it. The mind believes that by rejecting the event, it can soften its impact. But rejection does not protect. It prolongs the wound. The more energy poured into resisting reality, the further the heart drifts from clarity and the deeper worry grows. Acceptance does not mean approval. It does not erase disappointment or deny the weight of what happened. It simply acknowledges that what is real cannot be undone by thought alone. Acceptance is the moment the mind stops trying to rewrite the past or control the uncontrollable present. It is the doorway through which strength returns. From that doorway, something powerful becomes possible. The question shifts from "why did this happen?" to "given that it has happened, what is the wisest response?" This shift is the beginning of freedom. It places the individual back within the realm of agency. It untangles the heart from the impossible task of changing what is already written and redirects energy toward what can still be shaped. There is a calm that emerges when reality is finally allowed to stand as it is. The muscles in the jaw loosen, the chest softens, the breath becomes deeper, steadier. Worry loses its grip because it no longer has a battlefield to fight on. There is only truth, unadorned, unedited, unresisted. Acceptance is not the end of effort. It is the beginning of an intelligent effort. It is not the end of emotion. It is the space where emotion can breathe. It is not giving up. It is growing up. The world does not become easier when acceptance enters, but the mind becomes clearer, and clarity is the foundation of peace. When resistance dissolves, life begins again, and in that beginning, worry has no place to stand. 4. Attachment is the root of anxiety. Much of what feels like worry is actually attachment wearing a different mask. The mind does not fear the future itself. It fears losing something it has tied its identity to. A relationship, an outcome, a version of oneself, the approval of others, the illusion of certainty. The more tightly something is held, the more terrifying the thought of losing it becomes. Epictetus warned that the things we cling to end up possessing us. Attachment creates invisible chains, subtle, quiet, and often mistaken for love, ambition, or responsibility. Yet beneath them lies fear. Fear that without this person, this result, this belief, this image, life would somehow collapse. Fear that worthiness is conditional. Fear that stability depends on forces that lie outside one's command. The mind convinces itself that attachment equals safety. But attachment is a fragile foundation. When life shifts, and it always does, worry rushes in to defend what feels threatened. A delayed reply becomes a story about abandonment. A small failure becomes a story about inadequacy. A change in plans becomes a story about chaos. The attachment interprets everything as danger, and the heart absorbs the shock. Stoicism teaches a different orientation: to hold everything with open hands, to engage fully, care deeply, strive honestly, but without building identity on things that were never meant to be permanent. This is not emotional detachment. It is emotional maturity. It is the understanding that love, effort, and integrity remain powerful, even when outcomes vary or people choose different paths. There is a quiet strength in loosening the grip. The moment attachment softens, fear softens with it. What once felt like a threat becomes a possibility. What once felt like loss becomes change. What once felt like the end becomes a transition. The heart does not become colder. It becomes freer. It loves without clinging, hopes without demanding, and gives without tying its worth to what is received. Negative visualization, a Stoic practice often misunderstood, is not about expecting disaster. It is about remembering that everything is borrowed. By imagining life without something, not to suffer, but to become aware of its impermanence, the mind learns to appreciate more and cling less. Fear loses its leverage because what is appreciated but not clutched cannot hold anyone hostage. Attachment shrinks the world until only one outcome feels acceptable. Freedom expands it again. When identity is no longer built on external things, life stops feeling like a series of threats. Choices become clearer. Emotions become steadier. Worry dissolves because there is nothing left to defend except one's own principles. What is held too tightly becomes heavy, but what is held lightly becomes a source of peace. 5. Stillness is a skill. You must train. There is a misconception that peace is something one stumbles into, a feeling that appears when life finally becomes gentle enough. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. Peace is not a gift, it is a discipline. Stillness is not the absence of noise. It is the ability to remain centered while the noise continues. The mind in its natural state is restless. It remembers too much of the past, anticipates too much of the future, and rarely rests in the one place where power exists: the present. Worry thrives in this restlessness. It feeds on moments when the mind leaps ahead or drifts backward. Without training, stillness cannot survive for long. Marcus Aurelius wrote that nowhere can a person find a more tranquil refuge than within their own soul. He did not mean a perfect life, free of chaos. He meant the inner room that can be entered at will, a space built from awareness, perspective, and deliberate breath. The door to that room does not open automatically. It must be practiced. When the mind is stirred by fear, the instinct is to react, to search, to fix, to predict, to protect. But reaction strengthens the storm. Stillness interrupts it. A single pause, even a fragile one, creates enough space for clarity to enter. Breath becomes a tool. Attention becomes an anchor. Thoughts lose their authority when observed rather than obeyed. Stillness is not passivity. IT prepares the ground for wise action. When the mind is quiet, it sees more accurately. It separates true problems from imagined ones. It distinguishes urgency from noise. It recognizes what is within control and what is simply weather passing through. Training stillness is a daily practice built from small intentional moments. A slow inhale when the heart races. A deliberate exhale when fear tightens the chest. A silent observation of a difficult emotion rather than a rush to escape it. Even 90 seconds of presence can reset an entire internal landscape. Not because the situation changes, but because the way it is perceived changes. With practice, stillness becomes less of an effort and more of a returning. A return to oneself. A return to perspective. Returning to the truth that external circumstances do not dictate internal stability unless permission is given. And in that returning, worry loses its throne. It cannot command a mind that has learned to rest in awareness rather than agitation. The world may not quiet down, but the mind can, and that is enough to reclaim control. 6. Attention is power. What you feed grows. Worry does not survive on its own, it survives on attention, the quiet fuel that turns a single uncomfortable thought into a suffocating mental loop. Whatever the mind repeatedly returns to gains weight, shape, and emotional gravity. And in this way, attention becomes one of the most underestimated forces in a person's inner life. Where attention lingers, energy follows. A small concern becomes a crisis when examined 100 times. A passing insecurity becomes an identity when replayed day after day. A simple uncertainty becomes a threat when the mind circles it without rest. Worry grows only because it is fed, and it is fed through focus. Stoicism teaches that attention is the steering wheel of the mind. It determines direction long before action does. When attention drifts toward fear, fear expands. When it drifts toward what cannot be controlled, helplessness expands. When it drifts toward imagined futures, anxiety expands. The expansion is subtle, almost invisible, until the mind finds itself trapped in a maze it unknowingly built. But attention can be reclaimed. It is not a runaway force. It is a train that can be redirected with awareness. The shift does not require dramatic effort. It begins with the simple recognition that the mind has wandered into a place where clarity cannot exist. In that moment, a choice appears. Continue feeding the worry, or reroute attention towards something the present actually contains. Redirection is not a distraction. It is a conscious return to what is real and actionable. A single intentional action, even a small, seemingly insignificant one, can interrupt the spiral and restore agency. Worry hates movement because movement reminds the mind of its own power. Action shifts the internal narrative from "something is happening to me" to "I am participating in what happens next." Modern life makes this discipline harder. Devices encourage overthinking, notifications fracture concentration. The world constantly demands attention, then scatters it. In this environment, the ability to choose where attention goes becomes a superpower. It becomes a form of self-protection against both external chaos and internal storms. When attention is placed on what is stable, inner stability grows. When it is placed on gratitude, appreciation grows. When it is placed on effort rather than outcome, confidence grows. Attention shapes the emotional landscape long before circumstances do. Worry will always ask for more attention than it deserves. But the mind does not have to hand it over. The moment attention is reclaimed, peace begins to return, quietly but unmistakably. 7. The Stoic Detachment Loop. Break the cycle of worry. There is a pattern beneath every anxious mind, a quiet loop that repeats itself so seamlessly that most people never realize they're trapped inside it. Worry feels random, like sudden waves of fear crashing without warning. But it isn't random. It follows a structure, a rhythm, a predictable cycle that strengthens each time it goes unnoticed. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology gave it names. They knew that anxiety is not a single event, but a looping process, a spark, a story, a reaction, a tightening, and then another spark, over and over again. Understanding this loop is the beginning of freedom, not because it eliminates difficulty, but because it removes the illusion that worry has a power of its own. Worry only survives through participation. It needs attention, it needs identification, it needs a willing host. And when the loop is seen clearly, its spell begins to break. The first movement of this loop is always the same. A disturbance arises. Sometimes it comes as a memory that stings. Sometimes a future scenario flashes in the mind, vivid enough to feel real. Sometimes it is triggered by nothing more than silence. The message that wasn't answered, the opportunity that didn't unfold, the uncertainty that lingers without shape. And in that small opening, the mind reacts. It begins building layers on top of what happened, weaving meaning into a moment that originally meant nothing. The mind does this automatically because it wants certainty. It wants to defend itself before anything even threatens it. And so the disturbance becomes a story. A simple delay becomes a rejection. A challenge becomes a catastrophe. A shift in plans becomes a sign that everything is falling apart. In this way, the mind tries to create safety through prediction. But prediction becomes imprisonment. The story solidifies. Emotion intensifies. The loop tightens. Stoicism interrupts this loop not through suppression, but through awareness. Awareness dissolves illusion the way sunlight dissolves mist. Not instantly, but inevitably. When the mind notices the beginning of a story forming, the loop weakens. A space appears between the disturbance and the interpretation. And in that space, there is power. The power to observe instead of obey. Awareness is not analysis. It is not the mind arguing with itself. It is simply seeing the thought as a thought, the worry as a worry, without assuming it is a revelation of truth. This is what Epictetus meant when he taught that people are disturbed not by events, but by their opinions about them. The event is small, the opinion is enormous, and awareness makes this distinction visible. From awareness emerges the second movement, separation. This is one of the highest Stoic skills, the ability to stand apart from one's thoughts rather than being swept into them. A thought appears, but it is not you. An emotion rises, but it is not your identity. A worry forms, but it is not your future. Separation creates an inner distance, a vantage point from which the mind can be witnessed like clouds moving across the sky. The Stoics often used metaphors of clouds, rivers, or passing travelers because they understood that thoughts are transient. They move, they shift, they dissolve. The only thing that keeps them alive longer than necessary is our attachment to them. When separation is practiced, the thought loses its authority. It becomes something observed rather than something obeyed. And in that shift, worry loses its grip. With separation comes clarity, not cold detachment, but grounded presence. The individual no longer reacts out of fear, but responds with awareness. Fear says, "This means disaster." Separation says, "This is just a thought." Fear says, "This will define everything." Separation says, "This is a moment passing through." The internal weather shifts. Even if the storm continues overhead, the ground becomes steady beneath the feet. Then comes the third movement, redirection. Awareness sees the loop. Separation removes identification with it, but redirection is what breaks the cycle. This is where the mind stops feeding the story and instead channels energy into action. Not reaction, action. There is a difference. Reaction comes from panic. Action comes from clarity. Reaction tightens the loop. Action cuts through it. Redirection does not require heroism. It requires intention. A single conscious action, cleaning a small space, writing a single sentence, taking a 5-minute walk, completing an unfinished task, is enough to restore agency. Worry thrives on helplessness. Action restores the sense of capability. The narrative of doom weakens because the body begins to move, and movement signals to the mind that life is still happening, still unfolding, still within reach. Modern psychology now understands this as behavioral interruption, but the Stoics already practiced it thousands of years ago. They knew that the mind calms when the body engages. They knew that clarity returns when life is touched through action rather than overthinking. They knew that worry hates momentum because momentum dissolves fear's illusion of paralysis. As these three movements, awareness, separation, redirection, begin to repeat, a new loop forms. Not the cycle of worry, but the cycle of freedom. The mind becomes quicker at noticing its own patterns. The heart becomes steadier in uncertainty. The breath becomes deeper even when challenges arise. Fear may still knock, but it no longer enters without permission. The loop is no longer automatic. It becomes visible, manageable, and interruptible. Detachment then reveals itself for what it truly is. Not indifference, not emotional withdrawal, but the ability to engage with life without being owned by it, to care without clinging, to hope without demanding, to act without fearing outcomes. This is the strength the Stoics trained for. The strength to meet life as it comes, without collapsing under imagined futures. Worry survives only when the loop remains hidden. Once exposed, it begins to unravel. And in the space where it unravels, a deeper kind of peace begins to take shape. Not the peace that depends on circumstances, but the peace that comes from finally remembering who is in control of the mind. Letting go is not a single moment, but a gradual returning. A returning to what is real, to what is controllable, to what was always within reach. The truths explored here form a quiet foundation that worry is a story, that outcomes cannot be owned, that acceptance reveals clarity, that attachment shapes fear, that stillness requires training, that attention determines inner weather, and that the mind can break its own cycles through awareness, separation, and deliberate action. Life will not stop presenting uncertainties. The world will not promise gentle days. But the mind does not have to bend under every shift of circumstance. Stoic philosophy offers a different path. Not escape, but steadiness. Not avoidance, but understanding. Not blind optimism, but grounded power. Peace is not found by waiting for everything to settle. Peace is built by learning to stand calmly in the center of whatever rises. And in that calm, worry no longer decides who you become. The mind becomes clear, the heart becomes lighter, and life becomes something that can be lived, not feared.